payroll is around, for me, those employees, making sure people are paid. That's what pays their shopping bills, especially today. It's about putting money in people's pockets for the hard work that they have done, or indeed even volunteers who you're paying expenses to through a payroll. So it's about, we keep the world ticking. And payroll professionals, I think it's something that you've said before, they're the unsung heroes. Yes, they can be, but payroll does keep the world ticking. So my first bit of advice is make sure you're round the table. Make sure that the focus hairs are there. Do not let it go.
Managing a global team is complex, but Deel makes it simpler with payroll, HR, IT, and compliance all in one place. That's why over 35,000 businesses trust Deel to hire, pay, and manage their teams worldwide. See how Deel works at deel.com/nickday. That's DEEL.com/NICKDAY. Deel, your forever people platform. Welcome back to the Payroll Podcast, the show that dives deep into the minds that are shaping the future of payroll. If you're new to the show, welcome. Great to have you here, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on audio. Please do remember to click subscribe. Please do follow the show. But most importantly, for me, if you can, I'll be really grateful. Share this with all of your payroll colleagues, teams, and friends. That way we can really drive and raise the profile of payroll worldwide. Now, today I'm going to be your host. My name is Nick Day. I'm the CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. We are a specialist global payroll recruitment firm, helping people to find the talent that all the payroll managers are telling me doesn't exist. I'm here to say it does. Just go looking in the wrong places. So do give myself or my team a call if you're struggling. Today, though, we are going to be joined by someone who has had a phenomenal career trajectory in the world of payroll. And we're going to find out all about that in today's show. It's someone that I know very well because we share the same platform on a show called Payroll Question Time. Her name is Karen Thomson. She is a payroll partner, a true industry leader, and a regular, as I mentioned, on that panel show. But she's someone who's absolutely walked the walk in payroll, and she's done so for a number of years. From payroll administrator, processing payroll, all the way through to partner to one of the UK's leading accountancy firms, her journey is nothing short of inspiring. So we're going to find out more about her strategic leadership skills, her expertise, her pathway, and all the things in between during the course of today's episode. So without further ado, Karen Thomson, welcome to the Payroll Podcast. Great to finally have you here with me on the show.
Thank you. It is a real privilege to have been asked by you, genuinely, having seen all those people you've had the pleasure of interviewing before me. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
I'm delighted to have you. And full disclosure here, I've been trying to get Karen on this show for some time, right? So you could have been one of those leaders a long time ago, but I know payroll's busy. It's a busy time for everyone. It's tough to get diaries aligned and so on and so forth. But I think whether you're just starting out in payroll as a payroll administrator, or even whether you have entrepreneurial visions for payroll, you've kind of worked at all the different levels. And I think it's going to be a really interesting show where we can bring some of that to life and help those who want to move their career through to know where they need to start and some of the decisions you've made that might help them as well. But before we get into all of the deep stuff, let me start with a simple question for you. What does the word payroll mean to you?
Payroll for me is, well, it's passion. You have to have it in order to enjoy it. For some, it's a Marmite. But payroll is around, for me, those employees, making sure people are paid. That's what pays their shopping bills, especially today. It's about putting money in people's pockets for the hard work that they have done, or indeed even volunteers who you're paying expenses to through a payroll, even if it's not tax. So it's about, we keep the world ticking. And payroll professionals, I think it's something that you've said before, they're the unsung heroes. Yes, they can be. But payroll does keep the world ticking. We've had some fantastic examples in the past. So that's for me. But if you asked me the question in a different way, but it said, what do you need for payroll? I said, it is passion. That is my life. Genuinely, sad as that may sound.
Not sad at all.
Married, yes. Love hubby, but payroll is my thing.
Hashtag passion for payroll. That's a little nod over to Max van der Klisper-Cinco, I think, owns that hashtag somewhere. But yeah, look, you need to have it. You need to have it.
I won't claim it.
No, but it is important. I think the unsung payroll piece is important as well. If suddenly there were no payroll professionals around to process payroll, the world would come to a bit of a hasty stop. People wouldn't know how to calculate the taxes. governments wouldn't have the taxes to build the roads and do the infrastructure, all the different things that go behind the scenes. And yeah, I just don't think it's talked about enough in the public domain. So that's what this show is about. We're going to bring it to the fore. So let's start with your career. Tell us a little bit about your journey from payroll administrator all the way through to payroll partner, which I think is really exciting. Walk us through the path.
Yeah. Well, as a payroll administrator, so I lived in Edinburgh and I was actually in pensions at the time. So I was doing local government pensions administration. So I've been very much in that sort of people numbers world because with you've been doing pensions. And my husband decided to join Cumbria Police. Well, we decided. I joined Cumbria Police and I was trying to find a role so I was hoping for pensions because that's what I was. However, that wasn't to be. Pensions people never move on. I think that's why they're in pensions. They retire with it. So it was looking and I thought, right, and Cumbria Police had an advert for, I hate the word, I'm going to call it administrator. It had a different word called clerk, but a payroll administrator. And I thought, oh, okay, numbers, not that I'm an accountant, never will be. Numbers, people. Okay, that seems interesting. Cumbria Police, pensions. Yeah, I know a bit about police pensions. That's what I do. And that was how I started. And to be fair, this was back in, a long, long time. Well, Scott joined the police in 96. So there you go. We're in that realm. And it was a case of I applied, very fortunate, got the job. And that's how I started my payroll career.
Let's hold that thought for a second.
Administrator.
You chose payroll. I think this is really important. I'm a real big fan of. I want to really eliminate the idea that we fell into anything. For me as a coach, there's always a choice. And we either continue with that choice or we don't. You never fall into it. But you chose payroll. You saw the advert. You realized it related and aligned with your skills and what you wanted to do. And you chose that for your career. How exciting. What a great place to start.
Who knew then it would be my career, I might add. But it was when I got there, and you're talking Kalamazoo sheets and stuff here. You're not talking computers and mobile phones didn't exist, all of that stuff. But I got there and I know within the first week, I loved it. I knew that was me.
So how do we move it from clerk, wages clerk, I'm guessing was probably the title. How do we move from that to the next stage?
So while I was there, I'm a typically ambitious person and, I wasn't going to be blessed with family. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to focus on my career. So that is where I set out. I thought, right, I love this. How can I be the best in it? And this is how I've gone through life, whether personal or work. So up and becomes what was then the IPPM. Now the CIPP. And all of a sudden I got wind, and I do mean wind, because obviously there's no internet in these days now, and of a qualification. Well, it took me months at the time to try and find out what this was. And it was the diploma in payroll and pensions administration. And I thought, anyway, Cumbria Police, fantastic. They supported me because I was the only one probably that thought, I'll do a qualification in this. And that's how it started. So I enrolled. And the one thing I think that catalyst with that was the more I learnt, because with the police, you were doing everything gross. And with the qualification, you were now gross to net. And I know that sounds, back in those days, you didn't have everything that we've got today, I will also add. And that's what I did. So I embarked on my qualification. And in year 2, I thought, I need to know more. This isn't, I love payroll, but it's not meeting my needs. And a job came up with a housing association. And I thought, I can do that. I had no idea if I could do that. Let me just make that clear. I just decided I could do that.
What was the job? Was this a promotion of sorts, have a promotional title?
Yeah. Yeah, wait for it. Payroll manager.
Okay.
No, I've been in payroll. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm the first one that says, you can't just go into management there. But to be fair, it was a single post. So it wasn't like I had a team, payroll. But it was about managing the payroll from start to finish. So I thought, I've got year 1 under my belt. I can do this. I'll just learn fast. And I did. That is what happened. I went in, I ended up bringing in a new system. I learned about benefits in kind, and I must admit, I'm making mistakes. I learned about benefits in kind back in those days, you had dispensations with HMRC, or now HMRC, and we had wardens and things. So I decided I would try and see if I could get wardens not to have to pay tax and national insurance on their heating and their electric and everything. Well, clearly I learned very, very quickly that was never going to happen. So all of a sudden I got got thrown into this benefits world, and I just learned from, are you really being serious here? Read the rules. I then read the rules and thought, oh, okay, they can't have that. And that's how I ended up. So I ended up bringing in a new payroll system, managing that. I think I did health and safety. I did sealing of tenants, and managed this payroll function for around about 120
Very
staff.
good. So putting my recruitment hat on, I remember the days of Kalamazoo when I first started in recruitment 20 years ago. Of course, we would fax CVs in those days. Didn't have email, didn't have the same things. Everything was faxed, and we used to have Rolodex cards. So all the candidates would go on a Rolodex card. Now, of course, in those days, if you were in a sole payroll position for 125 staff, you would have gone into. I'm just thinking out loud. You would have gone into automatic categories. So you would have gone into my year-end category, because you have to put these candidates in different boxes. Okay, so we now have someone who can do year-end. They can do sole payroll, which means you do the whole process, which is really exciting. That makes you a capable manual tax, manual payroll candidate, so we can put those boxes. And I would have put you also in the Kalamazoo box. So I was just thinking how these things used to work. Now, of course, we've got databases and CRMs, but back in the day, you'd have been on a Rolodex card for me, Karen. I'd have been flipping through. Yeah, these are all the skills. It's funny how things shift.
Which would have been brilliant, because don't forget, I'd never used a computer system for payroll. So what on earth made me think, one, I could go in and use one, and secondly, bring in another one? I have no idea. But it was successful. And I'm always grateful for, at that time, don't forget, I was a student. So I met fellow students at what was then revision schools with the IPPM, the tutors, people that like Simon, Ian Walters, others like that, who I very quickly learned these are good people to tap into, not to use them, but to tap in and support. And so they did.
To be honest, they still
are. Oh, absolutely. Gosh, absolutely. Industry encyclopedias, without a doubt. But that's, I think, when I think, oh, how did I do that? It was with help, but it's getting it. So, yeah. So from there, in my 20s, I got bored quite quickly, it's fair to say. And a job came up at the city council. Now, this actually wasn't a manager's job. It was an assistant manager's job. So to some, it could have been a sidestep. But for me, it was over 2,000
I was about to say, going from 125 to 2,000 would be a step up. This is my recruitment hat now.
To 2,000. Yeah. And also, the payroll manager was going to be going on maternity leave in 6 months' time. So they were looking for somebody that could come in as an assistant manager, but would be able to step into the role as a manager. So I thought, go for it. So I did. Obviously, I was familiar with the local government pensions, so I thought I've got a little bit of extra bit knowledge here. Housing association were once upon a time local authorities before they went independent. So I thought I can do this, and I was very fortunate. Again, I do put in a lot of time and effort if going for a job.
Any roles
I research
you didn't
where
get,
I can.
Karen, that you've gone for? It just sounds like so far you're on 100% hit rate there. This is pretty good.
It's rather embarrassing, but no.
Well, that's good. That's a string.
So, but then again, I went for roles I thought I could do and really wanted
at the right
to
time,
do.
by the sounds of things as well.
And at the right time, yeah. So I did that, and that too had Kalamazoo sheets and computer systems. So this, I'm now in a place of, why have we got a computer? And I think this is where my brain started to change for future. Why are we using a computer and still filling out these blooming things manually? So PM goes on to maternity leave. Now's my chance. Probably not wise when I think back now, because that payroll manager was, of course, going to come back. So I started to make very subtle changes, but tried to get more efficiency. And I found this is what I love. By now, I'd successfully passed my qualification. I was a member of what is now the CIPP. We had internet now, computers, all of this. So things that you get now today, news online. I can't remember what it was called, but it was, it was called Pay Advice or something similar last time. All of these things. And I started to get a real interest in the legislation. Now, we didn't have bucket loads then, just to be honest, but I started to get involved with that. And then I saw, just by sheer fluke, a job advert, and it was with IPPM. And for me, I saw that as the other side of the coin. So I'd been doing payroll, and this was going to be my chance potentially to get involved in the legislation. Kate Upcraft was the head of policy at that time. There was just Kate. Yeah, just Kate. And I thought, oh, I could do this. It was home working. I thought, oh, never done that before, but can I make this work? Spoke to hubby. Can we set something up? Whatever. Anyway, so I thought, right, I'm going to go. And this will make you laugh, I am sure, being recruitment, because I think you would have a dippy fit if somebody did this to you now. I was very fortunate to be offered that job, and I'll say why. And I'm laughing. So I submitted my CV, which happened to be 6 pages long. I obviously went into
sounds
detail.
That way with the 3 jobs.
I learned. And the only reason, I remember Kate saying this to me, and I had to travel to Solihull. So this was day out for Scott and I, obviously living up in Carlisle. Or actually, we were Allenby at the time, West Cumbria. So off we went down. I got an interview. And Kate said to me, the only reason that she interviewed me was because I was a tutor for IPPM, because she gave up on my CV because it was way too long. But she saw that I was a tutor, so she thought, oh, she's maybe worth interviewing.
Knowing Kate as I do, I can imagine that conversation taking place as well. Yeah.
Yes, no, it did take place. It is true. So again, I was very fortunate, and I'll never forget. I think it was one of the, at 4 jobs, it was one of the happiest moments because it was also a job I loved. And still to this day, I didn't leave the Institute because of anything other than a new challenge, which I can come on to. So I remember it was Yvette Lamedy, who was chair at the time, and had brought in policy, brought in Kate, and the phone went at home. And I think the whole neighbourhood heard how excited I was to accept the position. I was absolutely over the moon. And I think that's probably why I love that job so much with members and what have you. Are there things I might have done differently when I think back? Yes, of course you would, but hindsight's wonderful. But I loved it. I loved meeting the members. I loved working with government departments. And I always say now, you can take the girl out of policy, but you can't take the policy out of the girl. And I'm still that person. I still love legislation, which is probably a good job, given I had a service line.
Definitely a good job in terms of what you do now, which I'm sure we'll get to. But also, it's great to dive into that wealth of expertise when we talk about on payroll question time as well, when we need it. And you've got that sort of fountain of knowledge to refer back to. Yeah. It's also really nice to hear. So you've mentioned 4 industry heavyweights there, which are Ian, Simon, Yvette and Kate, and it's a shame that not all of them are still, in the industry, because of course the industry's moved on and people retire and do different things. But really, really good people.
We do get older in the end.
Sad thing. So tell us what happened next then. So you're now with the IPP.
So with IPP, obviously IPO goes to IPP, different CEOs, and obviously it gets its chartered status, which I was involved with. And it was, partly of that was because we were involved with the policy function, which of course Yvette and Kate started. I just carried it on. And because of that, so we managed to get the sponsor from HMRC. It was Don MacArthur and Stephen Banyard at the time, who supported us along with the DWP in order for the Institute to become chartered. So that was a real proud moment with the Institute. So I went on, and 15 years I was with the Institute. Now, bearing in mind my career before, every couple of years I was bored and moved on. And I think that's what was different with the Institute. There was always something different.
You're what, 35, 36 now?
Something like, I would have been late 30s. Yeah. 53 now. I'll leave you there. I don't mind my age. Okay. I'm proud of my age. I'm not bothered. I'm not going for the fillers yet. But so I was doing this, and next thing, it was a case of I'd been involved with tutoring for Armstrong Watson. And they also did the payroll assurance scheme, and I was a PQP assessor obviously I worked for the Institute, so I did those things. So I got to know Armstrong Watson, and the payroll manager at the time, Brian Stenhouse, another known name in the industry from years ago, was retiring. And so it was actually Suzanne who approached me and said, would I be interested? Now, that was so scary. I think it was the one time in my career where I was like, comfort zone, gone. I was in a job I loved, an employer I loved, members
of course, it wasn't your choice this time. You were effectively headhunted, right? You weren't applying; someone came to you.
For the first time, yes, it was. And it was when you're presented with something like and I loved what I did, but I thought, am I ready for a change? It took me 3 months of back and forth to plough through it. Literally, it was like the devil and the angel battle going on in my head. And in the end, I met up with some of the partners, actually Paul Dixon, who's still CEO managing partner now. and talked it through. And I thought, do you know what? I can do this. I think part of it was I was maybe scared because it was like, well, I've never done this before. And, you know, you're talking late 30s and thinking, oh, is now the time? And anyway, long story short, I took the plunge.
Well,
I was going to hope that what I'd learned from members in this world, people like Simon, like Ian, who worked and run in bureaus, albeit different to accountancy firms. But I thought, I know there's support out there to help me. So I took the plunge in 2015 and joined Armstrong.
Well, you and I both know, because we chatted about this yesterday at the CIPP. We were both part of the CIPP Awards judging panel yesterday. I can't give anything more away than that because of NDA. But we were there yesterday and we talked about something that I'm very passionate about, which is fear. And of course, I am a big believer that your potential lives on the other side of that fear. And it sounds like you were fearful, but you didn't let that put you off making the step. And then on the other side, of course, we find your potential. And you're one of the very few people in the UK that has become a partner of the firms. Tell me a little bit about that transition and what that means for Payroll, what it means for you, and what it means in terms of that progression, how that differs from being a payroll manager, if you like.
So for me, when I joined Armstrong Watson, it was as the title was director, and I reported into, and the reason for me saying this is the structure to know then why it was so significant. So I joined as director, but I reported into a partner who was actually an audit, and that partner reported into Paul, CEO. So that's fine. That's what I've come into. I spent about 6 months observing what goes on, thinking there was no sort of strategy in place for growth because payroll, typically an accountancy firm, was always loss leaders. And I'd already said to the board, I don't really want to come in and be a loss leader. If I'm going to become, I want to make a difference because that's what I've always tried to do, not for profile or anything egotistic, just I try and make a difference.
It's a goal to aim for as well, right? That's what keeps the wheels turning, keeps us motivated and inspired.
So after about 6 months, I'd done a strategy. I think it was the first time I'd seen a pestle climbed, and also because obviously I'd also done my master's degree at this point as well. So I'd got a lot more strategic underpinning, but not practice, but the theory. So I thought, I can start to put some of this in place now. So I started to do this. So after 6 months, the first thing I did was, bless him, he was such a lovely partner as well. He said, is there a reason I'm going to you to go to there? Can I not just go to there? And that was the start. Had a conversation. It was like, okay, I'm now going to be reporting into the managing partner, CEO. Brilliant. Thanks for your help, but be there to support me, which was great. The job done. And I was director. And then I thought, and when I joined, at no point did I ever think partner. I really didn't. You know, I don't know why. I just didn't. And then the way I sort of work is the here and now I thought of 12 months ago. I'm 12 months, 24 months down the line, and I'm like that in every walk of life that I do. And I thought, nah, there's partners. Why can't I be a partner? Why? So to be fair, as you do each year, you have your goal setting, what have you, and I sat down with Paul and with the chairman at the time, Mike, and I said, what will it take for you to consider me to be a partner in the future? And don't get me wrong, it's not they're not supportive of female partners or anything like that. I think it just came as a shock because I'd never displayed any ambition for that before.
And there aren't many around. They probably went to the other accountancy firms and went, do any other firms have payroll partners? Not many do. Let's be the 3 or 4.
There's more now, but still not many. And certainly not female, to be fair. Accountancy is typically male dominated, albeit payroll is typically female dominated, typically. And it was explained to me that, you know, and I think this is the difference. As a payroll manager, you're focused on your service, your payroll team, your payroll, everything payroll. To be a partner, what was explained to me is you need to understand the business. You need to understand the other service lines, how it interacts with the payroll service line in this case. And it's not just about the silo of payroll. It's how can you as a service support the other service and vice versa? How can we get those relationships building, referrals, all these kind of things? And, you know, as you would expect, because I believe in providing tools, but I don't believe in spoon feeding. I think if you really want something, you've got to find your way of doing it, but ask for help. And so that basically in a nutshell was the advice I was given. So I thought, right, okay, off we go. How am I going to do that? And basically, I got involved in things. I worked hard. I went to events. I was fortunate enough to go on what they call a PDW Academy. It's a training company around different models. So being able to flex your styles to different people. Bearing in mind, I'm expressive, I am in your face, I am loud, but I was going to be working with partners who the audit would be analytical.
Introverted as well, maybe.
Or others, yeah. And I would scare the living daylights out of them if I went in with my usual style. So you don't change who you are, but I just had to learn how to tone all of that down. I don't get it right all the time, even today, but I do try and flex to other people. So if they're softly spoken and things like that. And that's what I started to do. I started to demonstrate, but each meeting I had, it would be, I've done this. Am I on the right track? So I didn't let it go. This wasn't going to be one of those conversations of I've had this,
you had this role
and
maybe
if I'm
right?
lucky.
You were not going to let it go. What do I need to do and get the support and make sure I'm ticking those boxes and getting through? Yeah.
And that's how I went about. And I'll never forget the day, which is what your next part of that question of what did it mean. And honestly, it was surreal. I went in for my annual sort of, I say appraisal, but salary discussion, whatever you want to call it. And I was just about to leave. And I know he did this to just to make
like
it so special.
Moment
really.
Coming up, and just one more thing.
Yeah, exactly that. As I was about to leave, Paul said, "Oh, there's another thing." He said, "We'd like to make you partner," and I was like, "You what?" I said, "Sorry." I had no idea it was coming. I've got very good intuition, or I like to believe. I did not see that coming at all. And I was like, oh my God, do you know what I did next? I mean, I am embarrassed, but I'm not really. I said and he sort of went to stand up and I just gave him a hug.
Good for you. Gives you a shiver. It's great.
I was like, oh my goodness. I was absolutely, I did not see it coming. I was overwhelmed. And I was like, I have to tell my team. But of course, this would be in the March time, but it wouldn't be announced until the end of April to the rest of the partners and board, and just the way it works in accountancy. But I said, please let me tell my team. So I got the team and I said, look, this is highly confidential. I hadn't even told Scott at this point. I said to Scott, can you get a bottle of wine on chill? There's a reason, but I can't tell you now, otherwise I won't be able to drive home, because we'd moved out to the country by now. So I went downstairs to the team and I got them together and I told them, and they were ecstatic, because for me, yes, it was a personal goal, but that wasn't the thing. It was, I knew by being made a partner, one, in an accountancy firm, secondly, it was payroll, and thirdly, as a woman, that was huge. And not necessarily my skills, whatever that was huge. And what it said to the team was, you're valued. Payroll is valued. We are on the map. Our business says payroll is worthy of a partner.
Raising the profile of payroll and the profile of women in payroll, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. And do you know what the team did? Later on, so I went back upstairs and I thought, oh my God, I need to go home. How am I going to cope with this? And they said to me, oh, Karen, can you come down? They had gone out. They'd gone to a jeweler's and had got like a glass engraved with payroll partner queen, Armstrong Watson. They'd got me a sash and a tiara crown to wear.
Attention payroll leaders, if you're listening to this, you already know that payroll has never been more complex. Compliance risks are rising, skilled talent is scarce, and getting it wrong can cost your business way more than just money. It can cost you trust, retention, and of course, brand reputation. I'm Nick Day, host of this show and also CEO of JGA Recruitment Group, specialist global payroll recruiters. Here at JGA, we're so passionate about payroll, we've even turned it into music. Don't believe us? Head to your favorite audio platform and search for Payroll Powers the World, and you can quite literally join us in song about how we believe payroll deserves its moment in the boardroom to shine. At JGA, we'd like to think our passion shines through to our recruitment results as well. With a 97% retention rate and an average 19-day job brief to hire success rate, we work fast, we work strategically, and we work with purpose to connect you to the hidden payroll talent that job ads and direct search methods will simply never reach. So if you're hiring or indeed planning to hire, why not partner with the experts that are shaping the future of payroll? Partner with jgarecruitment.com today, or better yet, drop me a message directly, and together we can make sure your next payroll hire is your best one yet. You know what? There's three things that come to mind for me. I'm going to put a little bit of my coaching hat on and an observation, right? So I think it was Henry Ford that said that whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. You are definitely someone who thought that they could. I'm a big believer that vision drives decision, and you had a vision and you pursued it. What I really loved about the whole story was actually the first thing you did, even before you called Scott and said, put the wine on ice, is I want to tell my team. And, you were an island there, and your team obviously valued you in the same way because they also went straight out and wanted to reward the award of the promotion. And I think that speaks volumes. So
it can still bring tears to my eyes now,
Big tears to
seriously, because
mine.
it was such one of those moments that it was probably the proudest moment of my life, but it was that team reaction. Even, take the Partner 50, the Reward 300. When I got back here, they'd got me a big bottle of plonk and a card and balloons.
Wonderful.
It is what you make of your team, and it is giving to the team, and it was everything to the team, and it still is. It still is.
A couple
so
of things
important.
about it meant a lot also being a female getting to the top in payroll. Now, I'm going to ask you a question I know I've already got your permission to ask this, and I think it's an important question. So I did to give people some context, I did a podcast on my other show recently. I have another show called the HR L&D podcast, which is obviously aimed at HR professionals. And I had a woman called Fiona Mackay on the show who runs a business called the Menopause Maze. And this I want to go with it, that I know from our conversations, because in my own experience as a partner of someone that's gone through the perimenopause and the menopause, it can be quite challenging, quite difficult, and it's something we need to navigate. But I learned when I spoke to Fiona Mackay on the other show that actually a lot of female leaders are often overlooked for these kind of promotions, not because they're not being considered, but because actually when it comes to putting their best foot forward, they're not always able to, because there's a lot of other things going on, and the board may not always know that, and may not be aware of it, or actually not everyone even suffers. 25% of women don't suffer any menopausal symptoms whatsoever. So of course they probably then are able to put their best foot forward, and sometimes they'll get promotion where someone else, maybe more qualified, potentially better, doesn't get it. Now, of course, this doesn't impact everyone and what's every woman, but it impacts women in different ways. But your promotion, typically, as I've discovered, it hits women between the age of 38 and 51 predominantly, which seems to be right in the sweet spot of when you've had to make some of these moves. I know that you particularly had some challenges with it. So there's a lot of females in payroll. There's a lot of women that listen to this show who want to get a promotion, maybe worried about how they're feeling in their bodies, worried about how the menopause may impact it. So I wanted to bring it to the surface. I know it's sensitive, so please share whatever you're comfortable sharing. But if there's anything here that you can help our listeners to navigate what is a really difficult situation, and not only just the women, actually, the men that perhaps are supporting them through that journey as well, I think it's be a really powerful thing to do if you feel comfortable doing so.
I'm more than happy to. I am ambassador to help not just women, actually, but men importantly as well. I have a husband who, let's just put it this way, and I'm not making light of our subject, but let's just put it this way. He's very lucky not to be 6 foot under in one of our fields. Let's just say that. But you're right. It can be difficult. And as you say, everyone goes through different things. I said earlier that I chose career because I wasn't able to have children. Just to top it off, at 37, I started to go through the perimenopause. I thought, my goodness me, what have I done in the world? But I started very, very slowly. But you're right. It was in that crucial part of where I had this ambition, where the menopause really started to kick in. So I've been fortunate that I don't suffer many hot flushes, but if you're under pressure, I feel it. And it's interesting, my feet and tummy would burn. Thankfully, you wouldn't see that, but you feel it. So you've got to somehow try and control that. This was my perception. It is, hopefully today when we go through this. But anxiety, I'm not a person who suffers that, but sometimes, to be frank, the hormones can play havoc with your head. And it's not that you're going off the plot. It really isn't. It is a case of, and a lot of women, I think it's important to say, don't even know that they're either at the start of it or going through it until something quite severe. And I think was the worst bit for me was, yes, I knew it had been done, but all of a sudden, let's call it the major symptoms, let's call them, hit. And it was like I just banged into a wall. I think my husband probably felt the same way of what has happened to Karen. She's turned into something else. And I had. But you can start to lose some of your confidence. And I think for women who are listening, and indeed men and, partners, what's important is one, to talk about it. It's not a taboo subject. It was when I started going through it, to be fair. It was like, oh my goodness me, nobody could talk about it. One of the biggest things I suffered, memory loss. So, and that was one of the biggest things I had to overcome here, Armstrong Watson. So I had a team who I knew valued me and I valued them. And all of a sudden, it was as if you didn't care, because a team member would come to me and whatever it might be, I have my granny's funeral next week, just as a severe example here. I would forget, not because I didn't care that they had a relative that had died. I just forgot. I just couldn't. And I've always had a memory like an elephant. Growing up, I've always said that, God forbid, in later life that I end up with Alzheimer's or something, God forbid, I'll probably do okay because I can remember everything from the day of dot, but I can't remember what I did an hour ago. And I know there's an age thing, but particularly with menopause, that was one of the biggest issues. And in a job like I've got, where you've got a team and you're trying to prove to be a partner, so you're trying to remember people's names, clients' names, your colleagues' names, and all I could do was remember faces. And it was a heck of a challenge. And I'm not afraid, to admit that. It really was. So what I did do, and this is what I think, because everybody is different, I thought, right, I shared this with the team. I said, look, will you help me? That I will forget things. So do not think that by reminding me, you're being a pain. I need reminded. So that was one of the things I put in place. And the other was I started to use tasks, whether a notebook and pen, or I started to use, when we sort of got Microsoft and you've got your to-do list. I started to use that. And even today, I will think I must do, or I might say, would you excuse me? I just need to start that email. So when I come off this call, I remember what I need to do. And I've still got fairly poor memory. Really, I do. It's getting better. I will say there is light at the end of the tunnel. I believe this does end. However, but that was one of the significant things for career. Scott, of course, has been fantastic, my husband, because, like probably yourself, I think for partners, especially long-term partners, who suddenly see a massive change in personality. And I will say this, none of my colleagues saw the change in personality. That privilege was left just for Scott.
I learned from Fiona, 69%, she said, of divorces happen in that menopausal window.
And I was thinking about that, because when you hear, and I know, and forgive me, I don't mean to be sexist in any way, non-positive, whatever, but when you hear old men just trade you in for a younger woman, all of these things, midlife crisis, and you hear all the buzz things over the years, that you wouldn't say them necessarily today, but that does make me wonder, because to be frank, I was an absolute nightmare to live with, and I say that honestly. However, I found the magic pill. And then I had an even stronger magic pill. And today, my husband's alive and I'm happy, and I am the person that I always was. Shorter fuse, perhaps, but other than that, so I think it is important. But when you're in a career and you're going through it, I think my advice would be recognize it, go and seek help, talk to your partner at the very least. They may not understand, but you can help. And, find the tools that work for you, so that if that opportunity is there, you don't miss out on it, because all of a sudden your confidence has dipped, or you don't think that you look right in that suit anymore, or whatever. I don't wear suits anymore. I get too hot. So I just wear loose dresses. You find what works for you.
Because it can really impact self-confidence and anxiety. There's menopausal weight. There's all these things that come as just when you think things can't get,
Yeah, you wake up one morning, you think, where did that come from?
I think you made a really good point about being open with your communication. What I can say to anyone's listening to this who's struggling and hasn't opened up about it, go and listen to the Menopause Maze episode, which I've done on the other show anyway, but it's actually being talked about a lot more in HR circles. And you might find your HR team or your HR director actually is more than accommodating and aware that this is impacting. It's going to be the biggest workforce of our generation. I think it's 4 billion women in menopausal age in the next 5 years. So it's going to have a big impact on the world of work. We need to be talking about this. We need to be open about it. And then we won't be overlooked or for a promotion, or it won't let us impact our work in quite the same way if we're able to just communicate with those. And, if you haven't got an understanding boss around these issues, then maybe that's the opportunity to look.
Don't find a boss that is.
Exactly. But thank you so much for being so open about talking about it.
Not at all. In fact, any help, one person, it's worth it.
Let's move the conversation on in a slightly different direction, because when it comes to leadership, you've got the role as payroll partner, but we know whether you're a partner, whether you're a payroll leader, leaders in payroll have been asked to do more than they've ever been asked to do before, right? We've got compliance to manage, which we know is complex. We've now got to manage all this new tech and the buzzword of AI and how we're going to utilize it and how we're going to bring it in. We've now got the employee experience question, which when you started, when I started in payroll, that wasn't something that ever came into the payroll conversation, right? But now we've got to look after the well-being of our employees. Are we giving them flexible pay solutions that allow them to stay and retain within our workforces? So how do you view leadership today? How do we manage all of these different plates in the world of payroll and still get the payroll out on time, compliantly, and all the other things?
I won't deny it's not a challenge. It is, especially, I'm 53. I was brought up in a world of your boss said this, you jumped and you did it. Otherwise, do you know what? You were sacked. In fact, if you went sick, you were sacked.
I remember those days. I couldn't go to lunch until I'd made a certain number of sales calls. You're not going until you've made them, and
Yeah. But the world of today is, and it's a better place. I'm not so sure about the employment rights bill that's coming through as how far that's going to go. Yeah. But the world is a better place. So I think for leadership, the way I sort of view it is, I'm naturally a collaborative and supportive person anyway. So I do care. I sort of live by that. The standard that you walk by is the standard that you expect. So for me, it's a case of, well, if you're looking at cultures and values, and I think as a leader, it's setting the example, no matter what it is. This is really where that flex comes in. So my personality and my sense of humour can be a bit out there, so I have to be careful. But with leadership, it is making sure that you've got flexibility. And I haven't got the magic bullet for how to give flexibility whilst maintaining, with trainees and things like that. How do you give that? But I wish I did have the magic bullet. I don't think anybody's got it yet. But for me, it is that by example. It's when I come in this office, I'm naturally happy, to be fair, but I smile, I say good morning. I ask how people are. It doesn't matter what level they are. I don't care. Just because I'm a partner, at the end of the day, I'm a human being at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what my title is. It's just you get the accountabilities that go with it. But, so that's for me, if somebody needs support, it's looking at how can we be more efficient. But that's not just for commercial. Of course, I've got to have a commercial hat on. We're a bureau in an accountancy firm. But it's how can I make life better for the team? How can we support clients to, have a better understanding of what we do? And that's, I suppose, again, by leadership. In fact, I had an example just the other week, if I may use it. Sure. We obviously have apprentices. And I mean, you're talking 18-year-olds. Never worked enough, and unfortunately, they were the pandemic bit, where they did their qualifications, and so even more, isolated. And this particular apprentice, that we had a client and who had misunderstood something, and the natural reaction with that age group in particular is to email. God forbid you use a phone as a phone. And I know this is normal everywhere. Now we have headsets, not the phones. But so I said to this, and we're really lucky. We've got Samantha Mann, another name in the industry that was on BQT the other last week, who is our training manager. And what she said to me, she's this individual. She said, she's really unsure how to talk to this customer. I said, well, that's okay. I'll do it with her. I'm in the office, which I think is better. So we came into a pod like I'm sitting in now, and I didn't use the headset. I put it on the screen, and we chatted to this client. And the client just had some misunderstandings, and we clarified that. But what came out of it more importantly was that the client started to share, because they said, is there anything else, is there anything we can do? And it's this sort of excellent customer service that we're striving for, this celebrity service that we want people to feel really special about. And, it takes time and it worked. And I said as it turned out, this client has to do all sorts of things with a nominal, which isn't payroll. But our system can generate particular reports and what have you. So I thought, I wonder, I'm not an expert on our software, don't get me wrong. So after the call, I said, look, leave it with us. Let's have a look at what we can do for you. Anyway, the point of that is not what we can and can't do for the client. It was afterwards, I said to her, what did you get from that call? And the first thing she says, well, it wasn't scary. I said, no. I said, you will find keyboard warriors are scary. People are not. I said, what else did you learn? And she said, well, not only did we solve it, she says, but we can actually help them more. I said, there you go. But you can't get that from an email.
You can't read tone in an email,
You
which
can
I think
get
is
that
really
from a
important.
person.
We know what tone we're writing it in, but you can't assume that that's the tone that's going to be received unless you're in that live conversation. But also, I'd say,
God bless Copilot is all I can say for me.
That helps. But also, I think, as you mentioned there, what more can we get? I mean, you had a whole conversation that would never have come back to you if you'd done that conversation via email. But I've got my daughter, she's 16, and if I try and leave a voicemail on her phone, her voicemail message reads, leave a voicemail if you want, but I won't listen to it. I don't do voicemails. Okay, I won't bother with that then, do they? It's a different generation that they communicate.
Well, they don't use phones for phones. They use them to do
and messages,
TikTok things and whatever all those things are.
So, being back then on the leadership piece and the partner piece, what does a typical day in the life of a payroll partner in practice look like?
Do you know, this is why I love my job, because no day is the same. I can, even if I take today, I'm doing a podcast. Who would have known?
I'm very pleased that we are doing, by the way.
If there is a job description, I'm very pleased to be doing it. It's actually quite fun. I should have done it a long time ago, so apologies for not, because it's quite fun we're having a natter. But, so for me, it can be attending a leadership meeting, i.e. With all the partners. We can be having commercial meetings. I can be having a meeting with the CEO. I can be talking to a client, just like I did last week with an apprentice. I can be supporting the management team, looking at operational. Whilst my role is not to be operational per se, as in I don't run payrolls. I know how to, but I don't run payrolls, but I'm there to support the operational side. So if something's not sitting right, if you've got a backs issue or something like that needs escalation, then I will jump in and I will help where invited, because I think that's quite important. I can quite happily be the control freak and put all my fingers and toes into everybody's pie. But let me tell you, it will not be wanted.
Equally, there's no ivory tower here. You're happy to step in as well and muck in if you need to as well.
Yeah, and that's the difference. When they ask me for help, I will be there to help. And that can be another day, where I'm helping, I say, apprentices, the management team. I also see clients. I will talk BD strategy with, a business development manager. I may go, in fact, I'm meeting another relationship manager that's in business services tomorrow, who wants to talk about some ideas. And this is where that partner bit comes in again of, yes, I'm here to support the payroll team and the management and the leadership, what have you. But I'm also there as a partner to look at how can we support different service lines together and be collaborative. So that would be another one. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of judging some CIPP, and they were fantastic nominations. I can't wait for conference. I'll be getting involved in National Payroll Week. The one thing I have learned is I can't fit in a week's holiday between now and Christmas, which is most unfortunate.
You need to try. That's one thing. You need to get that balance. That's difficult.
I'm doing long weekends.
Obviously, you've had a very, very successful career, and it's a very commendable career to get to where you have. But I wonder if there's any lessons from the trenches you can share. I remember where maybe everything went completely wrong, but actually turned out to be one of a really good learning milestone, for example.
I will say there's been many things in my career that have gone wrong, but I'm going to pick on one thinking about this very early on in my career. And the reason being is because it's embedded in me throughout. And it was actually at that local authority, and I was now the manager. So the other manager had gone on maternity leave. And the process for sending backs was segregation of duties, as you would expect. 2,000 employees. Segregation, and you have what's called a Section 151 officer, and that section had to sign the backs authorization. So you take the report to say, here's what we're paying, there's the backs, and then IT would submit it in this case. And those days you only had up until 9 p.m. to send backs. So process was to do that. You left it with the Section 151 and it was assumed it would end up in IT. So I think by me saying that, you've probably guessed what happened. It didn't. And I came into work those days, I was accountancy, just went into work the next day to learn that backs had not gone. And we had weekly, what was then known as blue collar, as well as monthly people, and they weren't going to get paid, or they were going to get paid a day late. The worst bit was the payroll date was due to be the Friday. So not only was it going to be late, it was going to go over the weekend. And that, it is a cardinal sin. It was, oh my God, it was that, oh my God, what have I done? Now, it turns out the process was the Section 151 would take it upstairs. It won't surprise you. That's probably where I've got my love of process from. That process was changed immediately.
Yes, I can imagine.
2, you go, you show, you watch the sign and you take it up to IT. But the experience, because what that taught me, and still to this day, and again, it could probably bring tears, I'm emotional. See, that's another bit of menopause emotion. You can't control it. But with that was that all I could think about was how many birthday parties now wouldn't be paid for, whose child wouldn't get their bike, who who might have died and they needed to contribute to the wake. It was all of that stuff that was emotional. And whilst at the time one could argue and say, well, it was, put that on yourself. But actually, I think you should. If you are in payroll, you have, in a way, you're controlling lives. And you have to remember that, is that it's not just about accuracy. I know that we have our CIPP accurate and on time, but they mean something.
But it's that responsibility that is going to allow us to really raise the profile. If we don't accept the responsibility, we'll never win the race to raise the profile. Yeah. They go hand in hand.
You can teach. Yeah. You can teach technical payroll. You cannot teach that accountability, that passion, that belief of you can mean the difference between food on a table and not. And it's different if something goes wrong, things happen. But if it's because of something that you could have controlled or did not do, you should feel awful. And you should. And if you don't, perhaps payroll's not for you.
I feel a little bit bad now because I'm going to take the conversation in a direction after such a poignant point that probably doesn't quite make sense to the listener. However, I know you have a bit of expertise in a particular area, which I think if I don't ask the question, I lose the opportunity for those that do listen to this that might be dealing with mergers and acquisitions. And I know you've dealt with a lot of these in your career. So I thought I want to ask this question before we open the payroll vault, just because if people come across mergers and acquisitions, don't know where to get started, you've got a lot of expertise here. So apologies for the kind of abrupt segue into a slightly different area. But
well, no, because that still applies.
Well, certainly, the responsibility's there for sure. So how do you navigate those high stakes scenarios when you're dealing with things like mergers and acquisitions? Is there any advice you can give to our listeners or our viewers indeed that may be going through a similar process and are a little bit nervous about it or anxious about it?
So if we're talking about, first of all, as a payroll bureau, obviously accountancy firm, we have done a number of acquisitions. And what I will say is at the start, when I first came into here, it was, oh, by the way, we've done this. I thought this isn't good enough. So my first bit of advice is make sure you're round the table. And as you put it in there, make sure that the focus hairs are there. Do not let it go. It will take you time for people to understand that yes, those crosshairs, it will take time, but persevere, because I'm pleased to say I'm now at the appropriate time. Obviously, discussions board and all the rest of it. But at that point, it's a case of we're going to do an acquisition. And I then involve my leadership team. We can't involve every Tom, Dick and Harry because until it's signed, it's not signed. So it may not go ahead at the last hour. So I think that's an important message as well, is sometimes, those involved are not being secret to be secret. It's sometimes very commercially sensitive. And it's understanding those constraints of and accepting that sometimes things will move very fast for payroll. And you think, why didn't you tell me last month? They may not have known last month that it was going to be signed on that date. So I think just to sort of have that bit of stand back and think, right, okay, what do we need to think about? So when you know about this, you start to plan. There are a number of things. So if you are a person going through a merger, i.e. somebody is buying you or merging with you, I think it's very important to be open and honest. I wouldn't do that in a negative way. I would like to think that most, certainly when we do this, we've been acquiring rather than being merged with, is that, it's important to listen to those employees, because you don't want to lose good people. There will always be those that no matter what will go, that they don't want to join the new company. But it takes time to embed new employees into your, if I take here AW's sort of culture and values, hopefully the businesses who are acquiring are buying businesses and or merging with that align with those values as a whole. But we can take on some businesses that absolutely align with those values, but perhaps they're on antiquated systems or still use paper. Of course,
people are always fearful of change anyway, right? We don't like change as humans.
Absolutely.
We like routine. We like to know what's coming, and
yeah. And I think the important bit, my approach, certainly from this perspective, is one of, okay, we've got this acquisition. I tend, unless there's an urgent need, you leave their software alone. So this is people who are now running payrolls for another accountancy firm. Leave the software alone. If it works, it works. You will change eventually, because you'll want consistency and you want that bigger pool of people. That's part of it. If their processes are different, as long as they are compliant, again, there's no hurry. And I think that's the thing. The only thing there's always a hurry with, certainly in the accountancy world, is if there's a financial planning arm, and that's regulatory. That's nothing to do with that. But most of the time, it will take a good 12 months for true integration with other teams. And if I take payroll, and it's because you don't want to use a stick on people. They'll just leave and they'll be unhappy, and they won't say anything positive about you or your company. So for me, it's about just embracing bit by bit. Let them see and think, oh, I'd like a bit of that. And the other way, of course, is we're not perfect. So I do not have this head that says everything we do has to be the way. We can do an acquisition where we think, God, it's a really good idea that you do that. I wonder if we can embrace that. How could we incorporate that into what we do and make it what we all do? So it's listening. I'm not the greatest listener in the world, I'll say, but it is listening. It is supporting. It's not rushing. There is no need to rush, I say, unless there's something regulatory or compliance wise. You need to bring the clients on. Those clients are used to a way of working, or if you're merging an in-house, those employees might have been used to completing paper timesheets, and all of a sudden you're going to get them to fill out an app, and the workforce is in their 50s. Okay, I like apps, but you've got to look at the generational, the demographics, the geographics, the systems. There's a lot in, but my IT, to be fair, here is normally the first to get involved, because you need to make sure that things are compatible. But otherwise, just take your time, have social nights, which is what we do. Invite people. We have sort of a leadership day. This year it was in Glasgow, because we did a Glasgow acquisition. So it's just, we go different places. So there's lots of things to do, but think about it. Yes, there are challenges. I'm not going to deny that, but sit down, work through them. What's different? What needs to change? What can wait? And whatever can wait, let those people come to you when they're ready, and you will find you will have a much happier, engaged team that embraces what you need them to embrace.
It's a wonderful response. And you know what? It brings us right back full circle, because there's some central themes from today's conversation. One is patience. One is nothing goes linear, right? There's challenge at every stage. It's how we handle that challenge, how we communicate our ways or network our way through those challenges to get to the other side. And communication being the third. It sounds to me like you've been a really strong, maybe by your own admission, you don't always listen as well as maybe we could, but your communication on the other side is very, very strong. And that really comes through. And I think that's been reflected by the way your team love working with you and reward you and give you all that back. So I suspect, Karen, we could talk for another hour nonstop about a number of other things. So I'm going to have to get you back onto the show another time as well, I think. So let's open the payroll vaults. We've got 3 short, sharp questions to finish off today's show. First one is this. What's one piece of advice you've been given, or you wish you'd been given, rather, when you started out in your payroll journey?
Not to go 100 miles an hour and think you know everything in one day.
Okay. I think you're still going 100 miles an hour. I think that's still there. You're still learning that bit, maybe.
But I accept that After 30 years, I still do
No,
not know
yeah,
everything about payroll, and I
I'm
never
teasing,
will.
What book, quote, or philosophy has shaped your approach to leadership in a life in payroll?
It's actually the Henry Ford.
Okay, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't. You're
The
right.
quote.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I years and years and years ago, I heard that.
Yeah, it's a powerful one, for sure.
Yeah, very. And it means something.
One I always like. I know I'm asking you the questions, but I just think it's a good one, and maybe people could take away. You'll see, I finished some of my blogs with this one, which is your day does not dictate your mood dictates your day.
Yes.
What's
very
one
true.
bold prediction you'd
Very
make
true.
about the future of payroll?
That, bold prediction. I'm going to go with technology. I'm going to go with, and I'm going to put the message out, don't be scared of it. AI will transform payroll in a positive way. We will be those advisors, those people who have knowledge, and we share it and we demonstrate it. We won't be the ones of robotics or anything else that's doing this with the computer.
Love that. Well, you heard it here first. Payroll partner, Armstrong Watson, Karen Thomson. Thank you so much for finally joining me on the Payroll podcast. I have genuinely enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you for being so open about your own journey, some of the challenges in your journey. I hope our listeners can really take the moment to reflect on their own journeys as well, and hopefully take some of that advice in their own careers. It's been a wonderful exploration in terms of your journey through payroll, how you've got to go right to the top of the payroll career journey as a partner as well. So thank you ever so much for being so candid, for being so open with me on the show. Of course, I will put your LinkedIn profile in the episode notes. If someone has a question, wants to reach out to Karen, find out more about Armstrong Watson, find out more about Karen's journey, please do check out the LinkedIn profile and connect with Karen. Hopefully you'll get some invites coming through from that. And of course, if you want to find out more about Armstrong Watson's payroll services, then I will put a link to that as well. It's armstrongwatson.co.uk, but there'll be a link in the show notes. And I will also put a link to Payroll Question Time. For those that do want to join the webinar, it happens once a month. We talk about all the major issues impacting the world of legislation and payroll. Karen, of course, is one of our regular panel members on the show, a show which I facilitate. So please come and join us there, and I'll put a link to that also in the show notes. Karen Thomson, thank you ever so much for joining me again on the Payroll podcast.
And just to finish off, Nick, by way of thank you very much for promoting our services here, I do want to say, and this is genuine to people, you are right. There are many who say that trying to recruit good payroll professionals is difficult, and it is. However, I know from experience with your company, you have excellent candidates, and you don't put anybody forward if they're not suitable for the job. So if anybody is looking for payroll professionals, Nick's your person.
Oh, Karen, thank you ever so much. Thank you. Well, there you go. You heard it here first. I will definitely keep that bit in the show. No, I really appreciate it. It's been really good to have a chat today, Karen. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Global teams are more connected today than ever, but managing payroll, HR, and IT can still feel fragmented. But Deel simplifies global work with one platform that keeps everything running smoothly. No compliance guesswork, no third-party payroll, just seamless operations backed by 24/7 expert support. That's why over 35,000 companies trust Deel to handle their global workforce. Visit deel.com/nickday to see how Deel can help. That's DEEL.com/NICKDAY. Deel, your forever people platform.